What's up? Who's ready for some Elden Ring? We're going to watch some Adam Raguzia podcasts and play some Elden Ring. It's going to be pretty fun. Let's get into it. So last time we left off, we were trying real hard to beat that dragon down in the Tempest. Is that what it's called? The, what is this place? Crumbling for Room Azula. I actually cleared most of it without you guys, so sorry about that. This is pretty fun. We'll probably go through it. I'm going to do one farming run just to brush up on my Elden Ring abilities, because it's been a while. And then we'll go through this. Turns out that killing those dragons, there's multiples of them. The 6-winged dragons or 4-winged dragons. So it's not that hard. They were going to beat this thing today. I feel like this might be the last area, although there is this area. Anyway, let's get into it. Yeah, I'm definitely a little bit out of practice. Also, I think maybe my audio settings are fucked up. Yeah, there's no music. What the hell? It seems like as good of a time as any to get that podcast going. Adam Raguzia. Love that guy.
It's the Adam Raguzia podcast, episode 72, and God help me, I've been scrolling short-form vertical social videos again. This is always a dangerous thing to do when the algorithms know you, and they know that you're into health and nutrition. This is dangerous because there's so many people out there making very popular nutritional health content that is totally divorced from empirical reality, though such people do not disturb me nearly as much as those content creators who know just enough real science to sound vaguely credible. And perhaps they know enough real science to believe themselves to be vaguely credible, but they still have no idea what they're talking about because nutrition science is legit complicated.
That's the Dunning-Kruger effect.
And it's totally fine to not know things. It's totally fine to be a creator of informational content and still not know things. I don't know most things. The problem lies in what people like me falsely presume to know. Anyway, I was scrolling dead-eyed in the night again, and I came across a content creator.
Oh, about me. That's a little bit like when ChatGPT makes you think that it knows something it doesn't know. In my opinion,
with an enormous following,
ChatGPT
who was just doing that thing that they do where they just walk down the aisle in a grocery store and they read ingredient labels and try to scare everybody about these big, scary sounding ingredient names. This content creator picked up a tub of something in her video. She read that this grocery product contains hydrogenated soybean oil, and she turned to her phone camera and she said, "That's illegal! They can't put that in there. How is this on the shelf? It's illegal." And I was, of course, jolted awake because while I do not know most things, one thing I do know is that fully hydrogenated oil is a meaningfully different product compared to partially hydrogenated oil. And it is partially hydrogenated oil that has been rightfully, effectively, banned in recent years in most developed countries. Partial hydrogenation of oil results in trans fats, and a pretty tall mountain of research indicates that artificial trans fat is probably the worst widely available fat you can eat. Formerly widely available fat. These days, you have to go to the dark web or whatever to find original recipe margarine filled with artificial trans fats. The jury is still kind of out on naturally occurring trans fats, which exist in much smaller proportion in dairy fat, for example. And the jury is still out on all of the new replacements the food industry has come up with for the partially hydrogenated oils that they used to rely on so heavily and have recently been banned. For example, the food industry now uses fully hydrogenated oil, which is still legal. Fully hydrogenated oils are saturated, and there's a mountain of research indicating that fully hydrogenated oil is as bad for you as any other saturated fat. And saturated fat is still probably particularly bad for you in large amounts, the research still indicates, despite the recent internet-driven rehabilitation of saturated fats by dudes who get clicks from other dudes by bragging about all the red meat they eat, because meat is the product of violence, and violence is a defining feature of manhood, as traditionally construed. I say that as a straight, cis man who loves to eat beef and abhors violence. Anyway, fully hydrogenated oil is a saturated fat, and saturated fats present their own health risks, which, the research indicates, might be almost as bad as trans fats in many ways, but artificial trans fats are still clearly the worst, and they've been proven to be industrially unnecessary, so it's good that they are gone. But if history unfolds as it has, historically, well then it's probably going to turn out that at least some of the trans fat replacements we're eating now are actually just as bad for us as the trans fats they were replacing, and perhaps even worse. Maybe the fully hydrogenated oils are fine, but when combined with other oils to make them softer, you get unanticipated health consequences. I don't know. I just know that's exactly how we ended up with the late 20th century explosion in the use of partially hydrogenated oils. Some bad science, some of it corrupted by the sugar industry, among other corrupting forces.
Oh, I was wrong. There we go. So, let's just call that good. Let's go clear this area. I want to show you guys what I've learned.
Some bad science in the use of partially hydrogenated oils. Some bad science, some of it corrupted by the sugar industry, among other corrupting forces. Some bad science in the mid to late 20th century indicated that partially hydrogenated oil would be much healthier than naturally saturated fats like butter and beef tallow. The Center for Science in the Public Interest and other generally well-informed, well-intentioned expert organizations went.
Alright, so this is the guy that kept killing me last time. This is the last thing I streamed. But I found... Oh, you know what? This guy is way worse. This guy's got magic. Yeah, haven't fought him in a while. Basically, the big archdragons that I was fighting further around in this area are not nearly as bad. Because they don't have magic.
And after McDonald's for frying their fries in rendered beef fat, which I remember when I was a kid was this kind of dirty secret akin to an urban legend. Like, dude, did you know if you eat Pop Rocks with soda, you'll die? Not true. Dude, did you know McDonald's makes their fries in beef grease? True. Or it was true back then, and it's not something that we would whisper about today, right? Today, fancy restaurants shout from the rooftops that they make their fries in tallow or duck fat or whatever. But when I was a kid in the 1980s and 90s, everybody was convinced that saturated fat, which we used to chiefly get from animals, was giving us all heart attacks, and any other kind of fat would be better. So, partially hydrogenated vegetable oils, which can be used to imitate butter and other animal fats. Problem is, partially hydrogenated vegetable oils contain huge amounts of trans fat, and they contain trans fats in particularly dangerous isoforms compared to naturally occurring trans fats. And that's why partially hydrogenated oils are effectively illegal now in foods. I can't promise that fully hydrogenated oils are going to be considered legal and relatively safe forever, but they are in basically good standing for the moment. It's not weird or illegal when you see a product that lists hydrogenated oil in the ingredients. Partially hydrogenated is really bad. Fully hydrogenated is less bad. Why? Because of the trans fats. Partially hydrogenated has lots of trans fats. Fully hydrogenated does not. Trans fatty acids are unsaturated fatty acids that have at least one unconjugated double bond in the trans configuration. Hand on my heart, if you stick with me, you're going to understand what that actually means. And as a bonus, you will learn about the scientific nomenclatural origins of the prefixes trans and cis, which have, of course, rocketed into the general discourse in recent years. And you'll learn why partially hydrogenated oils have lots of trans fats, while fully hydrogenated oils have lots of cis fats, and why cis fat is generally better for you than trans fat. Please think twice before making dumb internet jokes about how Adam Ragusa said cis is better than trans, hardy har har. In the particular case of unsaturated fatty acids, yes, cis really is generally better than trans, but this is why context matters. Anyway, the Latin preposition cis means on the side of. The corresponding preposition trans means on the other side. And in that sense, trans is a much more familiar word to us because it is preserved in so many Roman place names. Transylvania. Sylvania means forest. Transylvania is an area that the Romans thought of as being on the other side of the forest. Transylvania literally means on the other side of the forest. Transjordan is a historic name for most of what is now the modern state of Jordan in West Asia. On all the old British colonial maps, for example, you will see this area labeled as Transjordan. Indeed, Transjordan is a name that embodies an inherently Western perspective, because Transjordan literally means on the other side of the Jordan River. But which side is the other side? Well, the east side, of course, because this name was coined by people on the western side of the Jordan River, i.e. the Romans. Did they call the west bank of the Jordan Cisjordan? Holy crap, they actually did. Cisjordan literally means on this side of the Jordan, and it implicitly means on our side of the Jordan, on the side of the speaker. And the Brits used to refer to all of the land between the Jordan and the Mediterranean as Cisjordan. All of modern Israel, the West Bank and Gaza, the one-time British Mandate of Palestine. They seem to use the term Cisjordan to refer to this land geographically, and they use the term Palestine to refer to this land politically. Same way you would refer to like the nation of Turkey as being mostly on the geographic landform that people call Anatolia. Anatolia is the land, Turkey is the country, mostly on that land. Side note about Turkey. Turkish fans of the Ragusa Pod, I really need your help. I do. I understand that your country is attempting to rebrand itself. The Turkish government has made it plainly clear to the international community that they would like all of us to stop using the English name for Turkey, which is Turkey, and instead, the Turks would like us to use the Turkish name for...
Well, damn. This guy is way harder than the other guys. I think this is the same guy from earlier in the game, but leveled up. And I still haven't killed him. Same guy from the last time I was playing this game with y'all.
Turkey, which makes total sense to me. I support that, in theory. People get to decide what they themselves are called, within reason. And I'm all about defaulting in the direction of primary sources. I'm a journalist. I also understand why Turkey would rather not be known as Turkey on the current global stage, which is set by the Brits, this global stage, via their empire that made English the international language. The words and names and such will always at least imply some kind of perspective. some point of view on the part of the speaker, and the English name for Turkey is no exception. You couldn't tell because this is a podcast, but I did not capitalize the T in Turkey just then. Some English-speaking people encountered the edible bird that we know as a turkey in their earliest expeditions to the Americas, some 500 years ago. But most English-speaking people in and around Europe first encountered this bird as it was sold to them across the extensive trading networks then controlled by the Turks. The Turks controlled the entire interface between Europe, Africa, and Asia, and thus, English-speaking people started referring to any exotic good from far away as being Turkish, or Turkey, which would have originally been a shortening of Turkia, meaning the land of the Turks in Latin grammar. Turkia got shortened to Turkey in English, and then people in England started referring to these giant, exotic new edible birds on the market as being turkey cocks or turkey hens. And eventually they shortened that to just Turkey. Then the British Empire happened, so now the international name for the country of the Turks is spelled and pronounced exactly the same as the international name for a big, goofy, fully American meat bird. That's not great from the Turkish perspective, though I would argue the name is a legacy of a very proud time in Turkish history, when the Turks were so known for their prowess as globe-trotting traders that all exotic luxuries were thought of as being Turkish, even when they were Mexican, as in the case of the bird that we call turkey. It is a truly ridiculous bird, especially the modern broad-breasted white turkey, a genetic abomination that is basically saying directly to camera, "Kill me, I should not be." So I get that Turkey, the country, does not want to be called Turkey anymore. I get that. They want to be called what the Turks call Turkey, which is... I really have no idea. The Turkish government did a whole PR blitz where they put out videos and press releases and all kinds of things announcing this rebranding of their country in English, but they were totally inconsistent in what they said about how the real name of Turkey should be pronounced. Right? They put out a video where the narrator said, Turkey-yay. But the phonetic spelling given in the press release said Turkey-yeah, which is a totally different vowel. And it's spelled more like Turkey-ye, which is very difficult to say. And of course, the U sound earlier on is more like an or sound. It's more like Turkey. But that just sounds silly out of the mouth of someone like me. I have to anglicize the name somewhat so as to not sound ridiculous, right? Even though I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, I still pronounce it Knoxville, whereas most people who were born here generally say it more like Knoxville. All of us adapt the pronunciation of names to our own genuine voice. When we don't, we usually sound clueless or we sound like we're trying way too hard. It's fine, Turks, if you want to rebrand your country, but please agree on what standard English equivalent pronunciation you would like us all to use. Opinion seems to be coalescing around Turkey-yay, so I'm gonna try to switch to saying Turkey-yay in normal conversation. So speak now or forever hold your peace, Turks. If you don't want to be Turkey-yay, with the emphasis on the last syllable and everything, tell me now. Also, please tell me if this is a thing that normal Turkish people actually want, and not just some ultra-nationalist, revanchist identity politics that Erdogan, the Turkish Trump, is stoking purely to excite his domestic base. Is this like when the US Congress renamed French fries Freedom Fries, which wasn't a real thing? Or is this a real thing? Do actual Turkish people want people like me to actually call their country Turkey-yay? I'll do it. But you gotta communicate with me, and you gotta be consistent in your pronouncers. Side note to a side note, if you're managing a startup company with one of these like cutesy Silicon Valley names with no vowels in it or whatever, and if you want your name to be spoken aloud and discussed by members of the buying public, well then tell us how to pronounce the name of your damn company or product. There should be some phonetic representation of your name at the top of the About page on your website, and or you should just say the name of your company in the videos that you post to your corporate social feeds. But that would, of course, require you creating some original audio for your vid and not just using the TikTok jam du jour. Used to be that when I didn't know how to say the name of a company, I would just call their corporate landline and listen to how their outgoing voicemail message pronounced the name. But now companies don't have phone lines or answering services or anything anymore. So for God's sake, just tell people how to say the name of your thing if you want them to be talking about your thing. I don't really want any more people to be talking about Adam Ragusa. I'm already a little more famous than I really want to be. So I'm not plastering the internet with phonetic renderings of my difficult last name, but I have done so in the past when I wanted people to be talking about me. We were talking about trans fats and cis fats, which are also a thing, believe it or not. Cis means on the same side, trans means on the other side, which is why the Brits referred to the area west of the Jordan River as Cisjordan, on the same side of the river as the Brits. And they referred to the area east of the Jordan as Transjordan because it's on the other side of the river from the British perspective. Do fats have rivers that one can be on the same side of or on the other side of? Well, kinda, yeah. Fatty acids all contain, by definition, an aliphatic chain, which is a long line of carbon atoms, each with some hydrogen atoms hanging off of it. The carbon chain is the river. In this etymological analogy, the carbon chain is the long line on which something can be either on your side, cis, or it can be on the other side, trans. All carbon atoms have 4 available bonding sites. 2 of those bonds are occupied with other carbons in the chain. Each carbon is holding hands with the 2 carbons on either side of it. Or let's say that they're holding feet, just to make this image a little bit easier. The carbon atoms in the fatty acid chain are all holding feet with their neighbors, stepping on each other's feet to stay together. But that's only 2 of the 4 bonding sites each of the carbon has. Each carbon dude in the chain not only has 2 feet, but 2 hands. Grabby, chemically reactive hands that are just reaching out for anything to bond onto, and in fats, the carbon is grabbing onto hydrogen. So again, imagine the carbon is a dude who's spread out so that he can stand on the feet of his neighbors in the line. And then they're all doing the same exact thing in the line, when in their arms, each of these dudes is holding onto hydrogen atoms, 2 each, 1 in each hand. So the feet are in the line of carbon, the hands are holding onto 2 hydrogen atoms each dude has, right? What I have just described is a saturated fatty acid. Saturated fatty acids cannot be trans. Only unsaturated fatty acids can be trans. Our fatty acid would be
I cannot believe how hard this boss is, and he's not even a boss. This is like... it's like harder than any boss I've fought before. Is this the way the rest of the game is? Donkey said that this game gets too hard towards the end. And I don't like this. I mean, I like the rest of this area. There's other dragons like this that aren't nearly this hard.
As 2 of the carbon guys in this chain each let go of one of their hydrogen atoms and let it float away like a balloon, and then they used their now available hands to grab on tight to each other. These 2 neighbors were previously holding feet, now they're holding feet and hands on one side, right? The chain now has 1 carbon-to-carbon double bond, where 2 of the carbons are linked via 2 bonding sites, respectively, not just 1. If there were more than 1 carbon-to-carbon double bond in the chain, then it would be a polyunsaturated fatty acid. So now imagine our 2 carbon guys sharing this double bond. They're holding hands and feet with each other. Each of them has still 1 available hand holding onto a single hydrogen atom, like a balloon. It matters in which direction they are holding their little hydrogen balloons. Say I'm standing in the carbon chain, this river of carbon, and I'm holding my hydrogen atom out to the west side of this river of carbon. If my buddy in the chain, who I'm holding hands and feet with, is also holding his hydrogen out to the west side of this river of carbon, then we're both holding our hydrogens out on the same side, relative to the line. then we've got ourselves there a cis configuration. Our hydrogens are both on the same side relative to each other. That's a cis fat. And one of its many properties is that it is bent. When you have a cis configuration of hydrogen atoms around the carbon-carbon double bond in this unsaturated fatty acid chain that you've got going on, that creates, in effect, an imbalance of forces across the length of this whole chain. The hydrogen atoms are both on the same side of that double bond. They repel each other slightly, so this creates an imbalance, and therefore the chain bends along that double bond. That cis configuration becomes a kink in the line. The fatty acid chain literally bends in space around this spot where the forces are unbalanced. Furthermore, that carbon-to-carbon double bond is structurally rigid. Like if you and I were holding hands, we would still be very flexible superstructure of humans. If my one hand held onto your one hand, we could still dance around each other and bend and twist in a million different directions. Once we try to hold both hands and feet, then we're stuck. We become very rigid relative to each other, and that's basically what happens with these carbon-carbon double bonds. A saturated fatty acid chain, in contrast, is floppy and flexible. An unsaturated chain has at least one double bond, and the double bond is a rigid spot in the chain. When you have hydrogen around that double bond in a cis configuration, both hydrogens on the same side of the chain, that creates a bend in the chain. And that bend is rigid because it has a carbon double bond. These are kinks in the line that cannot be simply straightened out by pulling hard or whatever. Cis fats are, necessarily, kinky fats. And when fatty acids are each filled with...
I hate this. This is terrible. The boss fight, not the podcast. Paul, what's up? Haru! I did not even see you there. I'm watching Adam Raguzia talk about food science. I need to get up and close that door. I'll be right back.
from the dust. Oh, here we go, go, go. Let us heal and grow. You won't be alone, we're unstoppable. Don't be afraid to show what we're going for. This is what we know. Here we come back to life, we're still breathing. Standing up, everybody's gonna see it. Oh, all you need to know is that we're holding on. Even if we fall, we will rise up and we follow the path that we believe in. No, we're not gonna stop until we reach it. Oh, all you need to know is that we're holding on. We rise up from the dust and claim our throne. We all have our reasons why we are on this track. Oh, we all have our burdens, yeah, but we just keep on fighting and we never look back. Here we go, 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 let us heal and grow. You won't be alone, we're unstoppable. Don't be afraid to show what we're going for. This is what we know. Here we come back to life, we're still breathing. Standing up, everybody's gonna see it. Oh, all you need to know is that we're holding on. Even if we fall, we will rise up and we follow the path that we believe in. No, we're not gonna stop until we reach it. Oh, all you need to know is that we're holding on. We rise up from the dust and claim our throne.
guess who's back with a brand new rap? And by rap, I mean stream. Let's get back to it. Already, you still here? Sorry about that. I had to make and eat dinner. Should have said that. Hey, but I'm back, and it's time for some Elden Ring, and that podcast we were listening to. It's gonna be great. Let's do it.
These random rigid kinks or bends in their structure, they are less able to line up in neat little rows and to crystallize. Thus, cis fats tend to be liquid at room temperature. It's like trying to get a whole bunch of bendy straws to lay flat temperature.
I think I'm going to have to go back a little bit. I don't really remember
fatty acid.
What we're talking about.
So now imagine our two carbon guys share, then it would be one. They give you two atoms each. 4 available bonding sites. 2 of those bonds are occupied with other carbons in the chain. Each carbon is holding hands with the 2 carbons on either side of it. Or let's say that they're holding feet, just to make this image a little bit easier. The carbon atoms in the fatty acid chain are all holding feet with their neighbors, stepping on each other's feet to stay together. But that's only 2 of the 4 bonding sites each of the carbon has. Each carbon dude in the chain not only has 2 feet, but 2 hands. Grabby, chemically reactive hands that are just reaching out for anything to bond onto, and in fats, the carbon is grabbing onto hydrogen. So again, imagine the carbon is a dude who's spread out so that he can stand on the feet of his neighbors in the line, and then they're all doing the same exact thing in the line, when in their arms, each of these dudes is holding on to hydrogen atoms, 2 each, 1 in each.
Well, that was embarrassing as fuck. Can't believe how quickly I died. Maybe it's because I didn't have my headphones on, so I couldn't hear the game. There we go. All right, let's try that again.
Hand. So the feet are in the line of carbon, the hands are holding on to 2 hydrogen atoms each dude has, right? What I have just described is a saturated fatty acid. Saturated fatty acids cannot be trans. Only unsaturated fatty acids can be trans. Our fatty acid would be monosaturated if just 2 of the carbon guys in this chain each let go of one of their hydrogen atoms and let it float away like a balloon, and then they used their now available hands to grab on tight to each other. These 2 neighbors were previously holding feet, now they're holding feet and hands on one side, right? The chain now has 1 carbon-to-carbon double bond, where 2 of the carbons are linked via 2 bonding sites, respectively, not just 1. If there were more than 1 carbon-to-carbon double bond in the chain, then it would be a polyunsaturated fatty acid. So now imagine our 2 carbon guys sharing this double bond. They're holding hands and feet with each other. Each of them has still 1 available hand holding onto a single hydrogen atom, like a balloon. It matters in which direction they are holding their little hydrogen balloons. Say I'm standing in the carbon chain, this river of carbon, and I'm holding my hydrogen atom out to the west side.
I hate this so much.
Of this river of carbon. If my buddy in the chain, who I'm holding hands and feet with, is also holding his hydrogen out to the west side of this river of carbon, then we're both holding our hydrogens out on the same side, relative to the line. Then we've got ourselves there a cis configuration. Our hydrogens are both on the same side relative to each other. That's a cis fat. And one of its many properties is that it is bent. When you have a cis configuration of hydrogen atoms around the carbon-carbon double bond in this unsaturated fatty acid chain that you've got going on, that creates, in effect, an imbalance of forces across the length of this whole chain. The hydrogen atoms are both on the same side of that double bond, they repel each other slightly, so this creates an imbalance, and therefore the chain bends along that double bond. That cis configuration becomes a kink in the line. The fatty acid chain literally bends in space around this spot where the forces are unbalanced. Furthermore, that carbon-to-carbon double bond is structurally rigid. Like if you and I were holding hands, we would still be very flexible superstructure of humans. If my one hand held onto your one hand, we could still dance around each other and bend and twist in a million different directions. Once we try to hold both hands and feet, then we're stuck. We become very rigid relative to each other, and that's basically what happens with these carbon-carbon double bonds. A saturated fatty acid chain, in contrast, is floppy and flexible. An unsaturated chain has at least one double bond, and the double bond is a rigid spot in the chain. When you have hydrogen around that double bond in a cis configuration, both hydrogens on the same side of the chain, that creates a bend in the chain. And that bend is rigid because it has a carbon double bond. These are kinks in the line that cannot be simply straightened out by pulling hard or whatever. Cis fats are, necessarily, kinky fats. And when fatty acids are each filled with these random rigid kinks or bends in their structure, they are less able to line up in neat little rows and to crystallize. Thus, cis fats tend to be liquid at room temperature. It's like trying to get a whole bunch of bendy straws to lay flat in a package versus trying to do the same with a bunch of straight straws. Cis fats are the bendy straws. They do not line up with each other easily, so they tend to remain liquid. Olive oil is a mostly cis fat. It's like 75% oleic acid, which is a cis monounsaturated fat. One double bond in each chain. Both hydrogen atoms are on the same side as each other, which creates a kink at that point of the double bond in the chain, and thus the chains cannot line up as easily, and thus they are less likely to form a solid with each other. Cis means on the same side. Trans means on the opposite side. A trans fat is definitionally some type of unsaturated fat, right? Because there's no double bonds in a saturated fat. A trans fat is unsaturated, so it has at least one double bond, and on this double bond, the two carbon guys who are holding their hydrogen atoms, they're holding them out on opposite sides of the chain. We're all standing in a line. I'm holding my hydrogen out to the left. Gary behind me is holding his hydrogen out to the right. Get with it, Gary. Actually, what looks like chaotic behavior on Gary's part is really super lawful. Because by holding his hydrogen out in the opposite direction from me, in the trans position, trans meaning on the opposite side, by holding his hydrogen out on the right while I hold mine out on the left, Gary has actually created a balance of forces. His hydrogen is balancing out mine, and thus the line does not bend. The line is still rigid in spots because it's an unsaturated fat, and therefore it has at least one carbon-to-carbon double bond, which is rigid, but at least it's straight. And one of many consequences of that is that trans fats have an easier time lining up neatly and thus forming solids at room temperature. And there it is. There's one reason why you would want to convert some normal cis fats into these trans fats that are much less common in nature. Most easily accessible edible fats that occur naturally in this world are plant oils. And most plant oils are cis-unsaturated, thus they are liquid at room temperature, and that makes them less suited for all of the things that we use solid fat for, like biscuits and other high-fat baked goods that we want to be solid, or for bars of soap. It's very tricky to make a solid bar of soap with a liquid fat instead of a solid one. Also, cis-unsaturated fat goes bad faster, because that carbon-to-carbon double bond isn't nearly as strong as the carbon-to-hydrogen bond. So if your fatty acid chain has a double bond in it, which is what makes it unsaturated, it's likely that that double bond will come loose at some point, and then you'll have an available bonding site on the carbon atoms that's very likely to link up with oxygen. And that is one kind of lipid.
Oh my god. Finally we did it. Thank you for being here, by the way, Haru. Your support, your energy, that helped me do that. And yes, I know I can pass him because I did. I ran past him, and I cleared pretty much the whole area except for the boss. I wanted to come back and kill him, and we did. Nice. G. Thank you. Hey, you said you're in Norway. I think that's pretty cool. I've been learning a lot about European civil infrastructure. I would love to visit. I would love to maybe move to Northern Europe. I learned about some of the interesting bicycle paths in Paris. I learned about the trains in Hungary. I learned about the walking paths in Netherlands. Learned about the frozen, icy bike paths in Finland. It'd be a little bit difficult to immigrate, though. I'd have to get a job there. Oh yeah, I defeated the Godskin duo upstream. They were really hard. Yeah, anytime there's like two enemies, it's just so hard. Just like, they reminded me a lot of Ornstein and Smaug from Dark Souls. You know, one of them was skinny, one of them was fat. It was a fun time. I'm gonna turn off my voice mirroring. There we go. Alright. Well, this is great. Thanks, dude. Yeah, I feel like I don't need to go down there and clear it. I'm just kind of doing kind of a celebratory clearing the area, because I haven't done that on here before. But I don't really feel like I need to go down there. Actually, did I kill the big guy? Okay, I guess I will go down there. Let's keep learning about fats. Oh, nope, I haven't been to the boss room yet. So that's what's next. After I clear the area, probably going to do that tonight. Gonna fight that boss. How much longer are you going to be around? I want you to be here for that. If you're not going to be here much longer, we can go to the boss room. Hell yeah.
Oxidation, rancidity. Cis unsaturated fats, like the kind we generally get in the plant world and in much of the animal world for that matter. These oils are incredibly abundant and cheap, but they are liquid at room temperature, which limits their usefulness, and they spoil quickly, which ends their usefulness. All of this explains why 19th century scientists in Europe and America started playing around with hydrogenating unsaturated oils. Advances in agricultural technology had created tons and tons, literally tons, of oily byproducts that no one could use.
I'm glad that you can be here. I suppose that where you are, it's like 10 a.m., 11, 12 p.m.? Do you use 24-hour time, or do you use 12-hour time with the AM and the PM?
Here in my part of the world, the southern U.S., it was cottonseed oil. We grew cotton for clothes. Each bowl of cotton that you harvest has dozens of oily little seeds in it. And at the very least, that creates a lot of trash you have to get rid of at the cotton mill, where you shake those seeds out. The seeds are poisonous to humans to eat, and not very useful as livestock feed, so they were pretty much useless.
Sorry about that.
But there were so
extra voices
many
there.
of them created by the southern cotton industry. That is why Wallace McCaw of the Macon Manufacturing Company in Macon, Georgia, explored ways of processing cotton seeds to make them useful. And he contributed to the development of what became Crisco.
24-hour time makes a lot more sense. I've got a friend who uses it because he was in the American military.
Legend has it that
Got a
the
couple friends who
yellow
are in the
bricks
American
in the
Navy,
jaw-dropping
actually.
macaw mansion in downtown
Sounds like the
Macon were
easiest
made to
branch
look
to be
like
in,
bricks
'cause it's
of
mostly
Crisco.
just like
That's one of those
office work,
stories that's
from
just
what I
too
hear.
good to scrutinize for
That
historicity.
in the Air Force. But, so it's Tuesday morning. So how's your school? Is it summer now?
Explains why 19th century scientists end there, because that carbon-to-carbon double bond isn't nearly as strong as the carbon-to-hydrogen bond. So if your fatty acid chain has a double bond in it, which is what makes it unsaturated, it's likely that that double bond will come loose at some point, and then you'll have an available bonding site on the carbon atoms that's very likely to link up with oxygen. And that is one kind of lipid oxidation, rancidity. Cis unsaturated fats, like the kind we generally get in the plant world and in much of the animal world for that matter, these oils are incredibly abundant and cheap, but they are liquid at room temperature, which limits their usefulness, and they spoil quickly, which ends their usefulness. All of this explains why 19th century scientists in Europe and America started playing around with hydrogenating unsaturated oils.
Oh,
Advances
wow.
in
When are you gonna
agricultural
start
technology
school?
have created tons and
That's
tons,
exciting.
literally tons of
Are you going to
oily
do it in
byproducts
Norway, or
that
are you
no one could
vacationing in
use
Norway,
or
going
sell.
back to France?
Here in my part of the world, the southern U.S., it was cottonseed oil. We grew cotton for clothes. Each bowl of cotton that you harvest has dozens of oily little seeds in it. And at the very least, that creates a lot of trash you have to get rid of at the cotton mill, where you shake those seeds out. The seeds are poisonous to humans to eat, and not very useful as livestock feed, so they were pretty much useless. But there were so many of them created by the southern cotton industry. That is why Wallace McCaw of the Macon Manufacturing Company in Macon, Georgia, explored ways of processing cotton seeds to make them useful. And he contributed to the development of what became Crisco, short for crystallized cottonseed oil. Legend has it that the yellow bricks in the jaw-dropping macaw mansion in downtown Macon were made to look like bricks of Crisco. That's one of those stories that's just too good to scrutinize for historicity. The Procter & Gamble company here in the U.S. developed Crisco using some knowledge that they got from Wallace McCaw, and also some knowledge that they got by licensing a German patent held by Wilhelm Norman, a German scientist who was trying to market his own useless oils. Not cottonseed oil over there in Europe, but rather like whale oil and other fish oils. European marine industries had generated massive quantities of these stinky, fishy oils for generations, and people burned whale oil in lamps and some such, but by the late 19th century, there were cleaner burning fuels on the market.
Looks like I did kill the big worm face. He was, it's pretty easy, I think. I just had to take out the guys
So one
around
of the
him
many
first.
things that Wilhelm Norman was thinking about at the oil factory where he worked was how to sell all of this whale oil. Hydrogenation renders unsaturated oils solid, stable, and not stinky anymore, or at least the process helps with the smell. There are other processes that you can do to fully deodorize oils, but hydrogenation itself really helps. And how did Wilhelm Norman do it? Well, he did it by flowing liquid oil over a solid nickel metal catalyst in the presence of hydrogen gas. You do that, some of the carbon-carbon double bonds break open, and gaseous hydrogen swoops in to occupy those newly freed bonding sites so that the fats do not oxidize, and there you've got hydrogenated oil. I'm sure I am grotesquely oversimplifying all of that, as I always do, as a matter of necessity, but the point is, hydrogenation can turn unsaturated oil into saturated fat.
That's pretty cool. What weapon
I've
did
been
you
using
find?
the terms
And don't worry
interchangeably,
about if you
but
can't
under the
reply
narrow
very quickly.
definitions, oil is
I'm just
liquid
curious to
and
know more,
fat
you know?
is solid.
What is that weapon?
At room temperature. Here's the catch. You can hydrogenate oil too much. If you really go hard on this process, and if you convert every single carbon double bond into a single bond, and if you fully flood the zone with hydrogen so as to fully saturate all of your oil with hydrogen, the resulting product has limited use in food because it is so hard and waxy. You can melt it down, but at room temperature, fully hydrogenated oil is almost rock hard, and a biscuit made with it would feel like
that death bird
of
was
greasy
so
pebbles
hard.
or some such.
I think I got his
None of
spear.
the
Let me
fats that
check.
you encounter in nature are fully saturated because they're all mixtures of different kinds of fatty acids. Beef fat is, at most, 50% saturated. And think of how solid beef fat is at room temperature. Coconut oil is like 90% saturated. And if you've ever bought real, relatively unprocessed coconut oil from the store, you know how hard and waxy it is. Imagine if it was 100% saturated instead of being just 90% saturated. So the manufacturers of Crisco and similar products that are modeled after butter and lard, they only hydrogenated their oil just enough to get a
I was able to get the
semi-solid
death
texture
ritual
at room
spear.
temperature. If you hydrogenate it all the way, you get wax.
But yeah, it looks like I don't have the
Hydrogenate
death
it
bird
part of
spear.
the way, you get something texturally similar to butter. And you can put flavorings in it that make it taste like butter, and there you've got margarine. This is why hydrogenated food oils were, historically, partially hydrogenated, not fully hydrogenated. The problem with partial hydrogenation, that nobody understood 100 years ago, is that it results in unsaturated oils with at least some trans bonds. Carbon double bonds where one hydrogen is on one side of the chain and it's balanced out by a corresponding hydrogen on the opposite side of the chain, the transposition, which rarely happens in nature. Depends on which specific products you study, but studies have found that up to 60%, up to 60% of the fatty acids in partially hydrogenated vegetable oils are trans fats. Slather that particular brand of margarine or whatever onto your crumpet, and you are eating more trans fats in one sitting than you've probably eaten all year from naturally occurring foods. Butter and beef fat are normally a few percentage points trans fat. 10% of the fat, max, is going to be trans fat, and it might be much less than that. Why is there some trans fat in animal milk and meat? Well, specifically, it's the milk and meat
Oh my
of
God, I
ruminants,
just rolled off the
animals
edge
that
of
eat
that
grass,
cliff.
cows,
Damn.
sheep, goats. These animals eat grass, and then they use enormous colonies of bacteria in their many-chambered stomachs to ferment indigestible molecules into digestible ones. Normal cis polyunsaturated fats, like the kind you get in the plant world, normal cis polyunsaturated fats are toxic to some of these bacteria in the rumen, and thus they have evolved to where they ferment cis fats into trans fats. That's how trans fat gets into ruminant animal products. The bacteria inside the animals make the trans fat to protect themselves. Is it bad for us to eat? Well, there's a little science on this question, and the answer is naturally occurring trans fats in ruminants are probably not as bad for you as artificial trans fats, and some of them might actually be good for you. How is that possible? Trans fat is trans fat, right? No! That's as wrong as when people try to say sugar is sugar. Chemistry is complicated, especially the closer you look. Sometimes totally different molecules get categorized under the same name.
You got the
Sometimes
death bird?
it is the
That's
same
awesome.
molecule, but it's a different
Which
isomer
level of
or a
New Game
different
Plus are
arrangement
you
of the
on?
same atoms in space. Very subtle
nice job, by
differences
the way.
at
That's
tiny
awesome.
scales can result in radically different biological effects. One of the most common types of trans fat that occurs naturally in beef and dairy is vaccinic acid. And there's a couple of rat studies on the books where vaccinic acid was found to actually lower bad cholesterol, or at least not make the bad cholesterol levels any worse. In contrast, The particular kinds of trans fat that you tend to get from industrial hydrogenation
Oh,
have
wow.
been shown to
That's awesome.
definitely
I
raise
think I'm higher
bad
than that.
cholesterol
I think-
in rats and in humans.
Oh my God, I'm level 208.
That is the main way in which we
But I'm
know
not
that
in
trans
New Game
fats
Plus.
are
I'm still
really,
in my
really
first
bad for
playthrough.
us. They
208.
raise your LDL.
Crazy. I should reallocate my levels. I want to try to get better at magic, but I don't know whether to go for the sorceries or the miracles. What do you recommend? Is it intelligence or faith better? What is arcane? That's a lot of questions. But yeah, generally, do you think sorceries are better? I think it looks like sorceries are better.
And they lower your HDL. There are human studies where they take actual human beings and swap out like 10% of their normal calories for trans fats. And a few weeks later, there are double-digit percentage differences in their LDL and HDL, generally in the wrong directions. The mechanism of action here is not entirely clear. There are a couple of studies indicating that trans fats signal the liver to make chemical precursors
I don't think I
of
want to call
low-density
tonight.
lipoproteins.
I think we
which is
should
the
do a
bad kind
call
of
another
cholesterol
night, like maybe
that
tomorrow.
blocks your arteries and gives you heart
I usually
attacks
am
and
going to
strokes.
stream
Eating
on
the
like
particular
Mondays
kinds
and
of
Tuesdays,
trans fats
'cause all the other
created by
days I'm
hydrogenation
working.
promotes LDL synthesis in your liver. But wait, there's more. Trans fats have been shown to promote inflammation.
This guy's so much
Of
easier
course,
because he doesn't
scientifically
have the red
illiterate
lightning.
people who get clicks by stoking fears about toxic foods just love to talk about how everything promotes inflammation. Inflammation is a conveniently vague problem. But the thing is, it's real. Fears about food causing inflammation are not necessarily bullshit. Sterile inflammation is when some part of your body swells up as though it has an infection, but there is no infection. Lots of foods that we eat and other things that we're exposed to all the time create low-level sterile inflammation through whole parts of your body or through whole body systems, systemic inflammation. And over time, this constant low-level inflammation hurts us and shortens our lives, probably. There's lots of studies showing a rise in inflammatory markers associated with a rise in trans fat consumption. For example, there's one study where they took healthy men, they swapped out 8% of their calories with industrial trans fats for 5 weeks, and on average, these guys, their C-reactive protein concentration in their blood plasma tripled. C-reactive protein is an inflammatory marker associated with atherosclerosis. Trans fats have also been shown to stress the endoplasmic reticulum, which is kind of like a miniature, simplified circulatory system that serves individual cells, like it's inside the cell, in the cytoplasm. You know what also stresses the endoplasmic reticulum? Saturated fats. And saturated fats cannot, by definition, be trans. The balance of research and expert opinion remains that saturated fat is also bad for you compared to most unsaturated fats. It's just not quite as bad for you as industrial trans fats. Plus, it's a lot easier to remove industrial trans fats from your diet. I mean, they didn't exist until like a little over 100 years ago. Saturated fats, in contrast, have been in our diets since forever. If you're a government health official, you look at an ingredient that people can easily do without, and it's not natural, and it seems to be particularly injurious to people, so yeah, if you're gonna ban anything, you ban that, which is what they did. The ban on artificial trans fats in the US went into full effect in 2018.
I got him.
And industry
Nice smashing
adapted.
coup. I am
Now a product like
good.
Crisco
I'm
is
gonna
made
pass
with
on that, but
fully
thanks.
hydrogenated soybean oil, fully saturated, cannot be trans. And because it's so waxy, they soften it by mixing in some other stuff. Look at the ingredient labels. Just remember that fully hydrogenated oil is not a trans fat. It cannot be a trans fat. Trans fats are unsaturated by definition. Fully hydrogenated equals saturated. Saturated fat is also bad, but the government can't ban it. Nor could the government ban natural trans fats, even if they wanted to. Natural trans fats are produced in rumen, so they're just in the milk and in the meat of ruminants. Natural trans fats tend to be different kinds of trans fats, different isomers, all that. And what limited evidence we have suggests there is not such a strong correlation between natural trans fats and heart disease, etc. It's unclear whether that lack of correlation is due to these trans fats being different or if it's due to them being scarce. Because even if you got 100% of your calories from butter, you would still only get about 4% of your calories from trans fat, because butter is only about 4% trans fat. A diet heavy in pre-ban processed snack cakes full of partially hydrogenated oils would probably have way more trans fat than even that hypothetical all-butter diet that no one would actually eat. If you want to read more about artificial trans fat versus natural trans fat versus saturated fat, there is a link in the description to the recent literature review that was the jumping off point for my research today. Make good choices, and I'll talk to you next time.
That was a good episode. I think we should listen to another one.
This is the Adam.
That's funny. This one's talking about whether it's okay to watch somebody else's video on your stream, which is what I'm doing. That's pretty ironic. Let's see what he has to say. Love that shirt.
Mergusia Podcast, episode 70, and you have just clicked into an hour-long program on copyright law. That's pretty remarkable, don't you think? Like, it's pretty remarkable that tens of thousands of people subscribed to the Season the Cutting Board Guy are, manifestly, this interested in the arcane topic of intellectual property law. How did that happen? How did the fair use doctrine become a matter of popular concern? How did you get to the point where you, in your spare time, would spend well over an hour listening to a rant about fair use from a guy who isn't even a lawyer? How'd that happen? A big answer, of course, is that we are all aware that some of our favorite online content is under constant threat from spurious copyright challenges. Some of my videos have been demonetized over the years on the flimsiest of grounds, and the only reason that isn't a big problem for me is that I am #blessed to have a pretty big audience and a killer business representative who keeps me perpetually stacked with sponsors. My content makes enough money overall that I don't really care if a few individual pieces of content make less money or no money. What the cool kids might call selling out is actually what enables you to not sell out. I can stand my ground on all kinds of things, from unreasonable sponsor demands to copyright claims, because I am not ashamed to make as much money as is reasonably possible from my content. Money equals power, and power equals freedom. It also helps that the particular content area in which I primarily work, food, that's generally less burdened by copyright considerations. If I mostly analyzed music, or if I mostly reviewed movies, I would be working in a much more densely mined field. Other content creators, many of whom I know personally and whom I love very much, other content creators are under very real threat from a copyright system that has, in my view, gotten out of hand, both on the legal side of fair use and on the corporate policy side of fair use, the latter of which is proving to be more significant in today's world. How the US Congress interpreted fair use in 1976 matters a lot less than what some suits at Google think about fair use today. Google, or YouTube, or Alphabet, or whichever exact corporate entity is most relevant to this discussion, whoever owns YouTube, let's go with Google. Google is probably the most important single arbiter of copyright disputes in the world today. even if no law appointed them as such, and even if they would really rather not be in the business of arbitrating copyright disputes. With great power comes great responsibility. But I am not as convinced as many of my YouTuber peers are convinced that Google is dropping the ball here. I think Google is in a really tough spot regarding copyright. Then again, the fourth largest company in the world by market capitalization should be able to handle tough spots, right? Like, I think it's appropriate for our expectation.
Grand Theft Auto 5 roleplay? Like, yeah, if that's what you mean, that sounds like a lot of fun. I was thinking of buying it because it's on sale for $15. I played Grand Theft Auto 5 for the PS3, then I played it again for the PS4. That game is old, but it still holds up. I would love to try it with the VR mod. That would be a lot of fun. I could stream that. But I've never tried GTA 5 online, only offline. Is that what you meant? Grand Theft Auto 5? It's funny you should mention that because I was just thinking about playing that on stream earlier this evening. I'm not sure what Ready or Not is.
Of Google to be
I
very
don't know
high,
what that is.
given the stunning
Ready or Not is a game strategy in Grand Theft Auto 5.
accumulation of wealth in Google's hands that is occurring as a direct result of our content creation and our clicks. We can have very high standards for Google, while at the same time we can recognize that Google is in a very tough spot regarding copyright. As much as content creators are struggling to exercise their fair use rights in a place like YouTube, it is also the case that YouTube is full of flagrant copyright violations. My own videos constantly get reposted by other accounts that make money off of my stuff, and I don't see a penny of that unless I make a stink about it, which I rarely do. Why not?
He said that he doesn't make us think about when other content creators repost his videos, which is what I'm doing right now. So thank you, Adam.
Well, in part, it's just a matter of setting priorities in my life. I could either spend my afternoon filing copyright claims, or I could spend my afternoon making a brand new piece of content that will add value to the world and will probably make a lot more money for me than anything that I could make by going after accounts of questionable moral character that are doing legally questionable things with my creations.
I think that what I'm doing is not legally questionable. I think this is fair use. It's, I'm commenting on it a little bit. I'm playing a game while I watch it. Also, I'm a very small channel. If I was a bigger channel, then I would consider this a problem, but I'm not. So I feel like punching up is better than punching down. It's not even punching. Like, you probably wouldn't have seen him talk about this if it weren't for me. And I'm enjoying myself. But yeah, if I was a big streamer like XQC, I would not do this.
But also, I do also have a very liberal set of views regarding copyright. Liberal might not be the best word. Maybe let's go with relaxed or laissez-faire. In general, in practice, I think a lot of stuff gets protected by copyright that really should not be
I haven't heard of that game, Ready or Not, but it sounds interesting.
protected by copyright. I mean, I hate that people get to own combinations of words or colors or musical notes that really belong to the commons from which all our livestock graze. Remember the Dua Lipa thing from a few years ago? That awesome song, Levitating? The chorus goes, ba-da, ba-da. And she got sued by the authors of a reggae song no one had ever heard before that also goes, ba-da, ba-da, even though Dua Lipa and colleagues claimed, believably I think, that they actually lifted the ba-da thing from the Outkast song Rosa Parks. And Outkast did not sue Dua Lipa, perhaps because Andre and Big Boy know how absurd it is for anyone to claim that they own something as elemental as long, short, long, short. Yes, that particular suit got thrown out of court, and thank God Ed Sheeran won his trial, but Pharrell lost his with Blurred Lines, and things are getting pretty ridiculous, in the opinion of this composer turned journalist turned guy who often taught basic media law to undergraduate students turned YouTube cook. That's on me. Claims of musical ownership are getting out of hand. Somebody hurry up and build that bot that would automatically compose every single conceivable melody within a certain length of notes, and this bot would then automatically publish these brilliant compositions to a website and maybe register them with some nation's copyright office, even though that part isn't really legally necessary. And then whoever built this bot could just say, hey, all of these melodies that we now own, these are now Creative Commons. Use them together, use them in peace. And thus all future copyright claims over basic melodic material would be rendered moot. Somebody hurry up and do that, because this crap where somebody gets to claim a 3-note melodic...
I could do that. I could make that bot. I'm known for making bots. Not the bad kind of bots, of course, just good bots. Oh yeah, speaking of making good bots, I was thinking maybe it's time to finally get back to making Wigli, the cute little bot that uses your phone for you. The best personal assistant you've ever used. Oh my god. The combo. I can't fight 2 of these guys at once. I was thinking maybe tomorrow, after I'm done with work, I could start making Wigli. Basically, it comes in 2 parts. Well, 3 parts. The back-end API, the front-end client application, and the art. Which, that's the part I'm not so good at. I'm not an artist. I have artistic talent, but I don't know how to use the software that actually lets you create digital drawings and, more importantly, animations. Maybe I'll use Unity for it. At least I know Unity. Ah, damn. It's interesting to think about. You know, I haven't really brainstormed the front end too much. I know that the back end will probably be built on the Wigli API, which is open source. And it'll probably end up using LangChain because LangChain is just really good. I'll have that running on a server, and then the front end will be probably an Android application. But it might be useful if it was a Unity front end at least. But then can you get that to display on top? Oh my gosh, I really don't want to die with all those souls on the line. I never did really figure out how to kill these guys. I just gotta be more defensive, you know. That was the wrong button.
Sequence from a Sam Smith song is completely insane. Claiming to own that sequence, as Tom Petty did, claiming to own that is like claiming to own the combination of blue and orange, or whatever. You don't get to own basic elements of nature. All of us who do creative work of any kind, we are all just wandering around the same garden, plucking flowers, and arranging them in a variety of bouquets. It's amazing how many radically different bouquets you can arrange from the same set of flowers. And we do own our bouquets, but we do not own the flowers. Flowers are in the commons. I could go on and on about stupid music lawsuits, but today I'm a focus on YouTube stuff. Yes, YouTube is full of flagrant copyright violations of my work and of everybody else's work, but almost never do I go after the violators. Do I have to say alleged violators? I don't think so, because I'm the one doing the alleging. Like, I'm making the allegation right now. I'm saying they violated my copyright, and alas, I am not a court of law unto myself, though I do think Judge Goose would be a good-ass show. Anyway, I almost never go after people who I believe are violating my copyrights. In part because I have very permissive views on copyright, and I need to put my money with... flowers and arranging them in a variety of bouquets. It's amazing how many radically different bouquets you can arrange from the same set of flowers. And we do own our bouquets, but we do not own the flowers. The flowers are in the commons. I could go on and on about stupid music lawsuits, but today I'm a focus on YouTube stuff. Yes, YouTube is full of flagrant copyright violations of my work and of everybody else's work, but almost never do I go after the violators. Do I have to say alleged violators? I don't think so, because I'm the one doing the alleging. Like, I'm making the allegation right now. I'm saying they violated my copyright, and alas, I am not a court of law unto myself, though I do think Judge Goose would be a good-ass show. Anyway, I almost never go after people who I believe are violating my copyrights. In part because I have very permissive views on copyright, and I need to put my money where my mouth is. My standard, not the legal standard, though this standard is a component of copyright law, my standard is this person using my stuff to make something new? And there's a few ancillary questions that I consider that we'll get back to, but one that ought to be the biggest one for all of
I was just having a conversation with my roommate. I wanted to tell you, Haru, that I appreciate you. And I like that you're here watching my stream. Thank you.
of us is, does the new work make or say or do something substantially different than the previous work that it's drawing on? If somebody takes my stuff and makes new culture with it, such that nobody would watch the other guy's thing instead of watching my thing, then I probably have no grounds to complain. That is my ethical position on fair use. Did they make new culture with it? I am going to argue why I think this very simple consideration, this very simple question, this should be at the heart of all fair use considerations. It's already at the heart of many fair use considerations, but fair use as a legal concept is surprisingly vague, so it can legitimately mean lots of different things to lots of different people. Copyright disputes are very rarely adjudicated in court. Something like 99.99999% of copyright disputes are resolved out of court, and as a result, clarifying judicial precedents are rarely ever set. In this arena, more so than in others, the law really is what we say it is, because judges rarely get a say in the matter, and the letter of the law is as vague as it is sparse. What even is fair use? Well, first we need to define copyright. Copyright is one of the 4 broadly recognized types of intellectual property. The other 3 being patents, trademarks, and trade secrets. Those are the 4 big legal categories of intangible ideas that you can own. Colloquially, people often use copyright to refer to all 4 of these. intellectual property rights, but there are really big differences between them. Trade secrets are just valuable bits of information that businesses keep to themselves. The most famous example of all time being the recipe for Coca-Cola, which for nearly 150 years has been locked in a steampunk vault deep under the streets of Atlanta, along with all of the lost Confederate gold, one presumes. Wherever they really keep it, the good people of the Coca-Cola Company have kept that recipe secret for an astoundingly long time, since Reconstruction. Early versions of the recipe have leaked over the years, but never the current production formula. Surely any employee who gets access to any part of that recipe has to sign a non-disclosure agreement as a condition of their employment, and if they violate that agreement by bringing the secret formula over to the chum bucket, Coca-Cola can sue that now former employee, and the courts will probably rule in Coke's favor. Also, if you engage in corporate espionage, you can get sent to prison. If you work at Coca-Cola and you snap a copy of the recipe with your phone, knowing full well that you were not authorized to do so, and then if you text that photo to your buddy Plankton so that the chum bucket can derive an economic benefit at the expense of the Coke company, well then that's not just a civil infraction, that's a criminal offense. Allegedly. It's the Coca-Cola Company that decides which information it possesses counts as trade secrets, but of course, they can't get ridiculous with that. If they alleged theft of trade secrets because a former employee divulged the brand of office chair favored in the Coca-Cola offices, then I doubt that even the most favorable Atlanta law enforcement agency, prosecutor, or a judge would seriously entertain that case. The administration of justice always requires, judgment. That's trade secrets. Patents are like trade secrets that you actively register with the government. You fill out a government form where you say, hey, I've invented this thing called Coca-Cola. It's got cocaine in it originally. You're gonna love it. Here's the recipe. And if you can convince a government patent clerk that your invention really is new and not obvious, then they'll grant you a patent that says only you are able to market the fruits of that formula for a period of 20 years, usually. And it's usually not renewable. I suppose I'm talking this whole episode about U.S. intellectual property law, but U.S. intellectual property law has been effectively, mostly, internationalized via trade agreements and such. So this is basically true for basically everyone within the sound of my voice. Patents generally last about 20 years, which isn't that long in the scheme of things. And once the patent is up, the chum bucket can immediately start marketing Coca-Cola themselves, because the recipe is public knowledge. It's in the patent filing from 20 years previous. Patents make it illegal for anyone but the patent holder to market an invention. In order to follow that law, the rest of us have to be able to know what exactly it is that we're not allowed to market. You can't make secret laws. The word patent comes from the Latin word patere, which literally means to lay open. You have to lay open your invention for public inspection if you want the government to grant you a temporary monopoly to market this invention. This is what a patent is. The best argument in favor of patents, from the societal perspective, is that they, arguably, help to incentivize innovation. If I invest years of research and development into an invention, it would suck if the second I start selling my invention, 100 other companies said, wow, that looks cool. Let's sell exactly the same thing, even though we did none of the work to develop this great idea. From a societal perspective, I want inventors to be sufficiently rewarded for their inventions, and patents can help ensure that they are rewarded. But at the same time, you don't want inventors to own their inventions forever, right? And what if it's a super useful product, but the company that owns the patent is having some troubles and they aren't actually producing this product? Or maybe they are producing the product, but what if they just suck and they're complacent and they do a terrible job actually manufacturing this invention? So all the models on the market are just shoddy. What if there are slight improvements that could be made to the design, etc.? What if the inventor has been richly compensated for their invention, but now they're using their monopoly to ruthlessly price gouge on this now essential product? No competition means very little downward price pressure on an essential good. The price is only limited by the ability price. Exactly the same thing, even though we did none of the work to develop this great idea. It's in the patent filing from 20 years previous. To market. You can't make secret laws. The word patent comes from the Latin word patere, which literally means to lay open. You have to lay open your invention for public inspection if you want the government to grant you a temporary monopoly to market this invention, which is what a patent is. The best argument in favor of patents, from the societal perspective, is that they, arguably, help to incentivize innovation. If I invest years of research and development into an invention, it would suck if the second I start selling my invention, 100 other companies said, wow, that looks cool. Let's sell exactly the same thing, even though we did none of the work to develop this great idea. From a societal perspective, I want inventors to be sufficiently rewarded for their inventions, and patents can help ensure that they are rewarded. But at the same time, you don't want inventors to own their inventions forever, right? And what if it's a super useful product, but the company that owns the patent is having some troubles and they aren't actually producing this product? Or maybe they are producing the product, but what if they just suck and they're complacent and they do a terrible job actually manufacturing this invention? So all the models on the market are just shoddy. What if there are slight improvements that could be made to the design, etc.? What if the inventor has been richly compensated for their invention, but now they're using their monopoly to ruthlessly price gouge on this now essential product? No competition means very little downward price pressure on an essential good. The price is only limited by the ability of consumers to pay. From a societal perspective, you want to free up the market to fully realize the potential of an invention. So the compromise is, you give the inventor a 20-year monopoly to get paid. But after that, it's everybody's invention. Everybody else can start marketing the invention the day the patent expires, because the specifics of the invention are already known. The cat's already out of the bag. You had to lay open your invention to get the patent in the first place. Anybody can see your formula or your blueprints or whatever it is online. From the patent holder's perspective, that might sound like a bad deal, but patents offer greater protection than trade secrets, albeit for a limited time. The Coke formula is a trade secret.
All right, that's gonna do it. Sorry I didn't get a chance to go to the boss room. Same time tomorrow, you know? Hopefully. Oh, yeah, that fan. Can we turn that off? Yeah, I'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm gonna spend these souls on one more level. I'm gonna be level 209. I'm just gonna go intelligence. You know, I can always reallocate them later. And that's gonna do it. So, yeah, thanks for being here. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.